Hello! We are glad to have you as a part of our hard-working team. Please try to get to know each other so that we can work together as a team.
Working in this orchard from bloom to harvest should be safe. You should not be afraid to come to work.
But you must be careful and alert so that accidents do not happen. By working together, we make this orchard safer. This means your working environment is less stressful, making your job more enjoyable. But most importantly is the law.
When it comes to pesticides, the Environmental Protection Agency, the EPA, passed a rule called the Worker Protection Standard to help keep you safer while you work. We also call this the WPS. This rule not only protects workers who apply pesticides, but anyone who works in an area that may have been treated with pesticides. The WPS requires all workers to know about pesticide safety. It also requires you to take the necessary precautions to avoid a potential exposure on the job. Remember, this law helps to protect you. Your boss cannot punish you for trying to follow these rules, and no one can force you to apply pesticides or to enter an area that has been treated with pesticides before the label says it is safe to do so. However, your responsibility is to learn the information that you'll see in this video. The material presented here is so important that the owners of this facility are paying you to attend this training session. You have an obligation to them and to yourself to pay attention and learn this material. You may be asked questions about it sometime in the future.
And your own safety may depend on it.
Again, there's no need to be afraid for your safety at work, but you must be alert. Orchards are no different than other farms. Pesticides must be used according to their label. If not, potentially dangerous exposures and accidents can occur. That's why pesticides must always be clearly marked and stored in their original containers. Pesticides come in many different forms. Liquids, aerosols, dusts, and granular formulations each have different safety concerns. For example, liquids, which are often in concentrated form, may require greater eye protection due to splashing during mixing. When working in orchards, dust and fine mists of pesticides are what you may encounter most often. Working with these applications will require special breathing apparatus. As you can see, if you pay attention to the labels and signs you see at work, you can reduce potential exposure and also accidents. Here are some examples of these warning signs. Signs like this: keep out. It means exactly what it says. Keep out. Do not enter.
What if I have to go in just briefly to pick up something I left behind?
You can't enter, period, and there are no exceptions. That sign was placed there for a reason. Possibly some pesticides were recently sprayed.
Remember, not all pesticide residues are visible to our eyes, but they could still be present.
Residues you can't see may be on equipment in treated areas, and that could be hazardous to anyone who isn't wearing the proper protective clothing. It's important to follow label directions on the restricted entry intervals, which indicate how much time must pass before you can safely go back into a treated area. We usually refer to this as the REI. Another important item to notice on every label is a signal word. This word tells how toxic a pesticide is. Caution is the least toxic. Then warning, then danger poison, which is the most toxic. Another signal word is danger, which identifies the pesticide as a severe eye or skin irritant. Only those workers who have pesticide application responsibilities should ever be handling these pesticides. If it's not your job, stay away from them.
What about empty containers? Can they be used for other purposes?
Absolutely not. Never take pesticides or pesticide containers home from work. They are not safe for any use around your home, and here's why. Even a small amount of some pesticides can be poisonous. When disposing of used pesticide containers, make sure to triple rinse containers and then render them unusable. For proper disposal of the containers, closely follow the directions on the container label or contact the state regulatory agency responsible for pesticides. Even if you rinse out an empty container, enough residues could be left inside to make you very sick if you were to drink water from it. After all, drinking is just one of the ways pesticides can get into your body. The truth is, most pesticide exposure occurs through skin contact or by breathing the pesticide. Let's look at some examples. Suppose someone doesn't look for a keep out or do not enter sign, or maybe he sees it and ignores it and walks into an unlocked storage building. Highly toxic pesticides could have spilled onto the floor from a leaky container. Later on, he rubs dirt off his shoes or ties his shoes, and the chemicals get on his hands, from his hands to his face, eyes, or even mouth. Or someone can walk into an area that was treated earlier that day. Even without knowing where or how it happened, they can get pesticide residues on themselves. In some cases, just breathing in the fumes can be enough to make you sick. Occasionally, weather or other conditions may cause some small amounts of pesticides to land somewhere other than their intended target. This is called drift. Your boss and the pesticide handlers at your facility must make sure that each pesticide is applied so that it does not come into contact with anyone who's not properly trained and wearing the appropriate protective equipment. It is important that all pesticide handlers know the possible health and environmental hazards that can result from pesticide drift, and how to safely and correctly use any equipment to avoid the possibility of drift. Workers must never be permitted to be working in areas where drift may occur. Again, the thing to remember is to be alert. Always look for these signs and labels. If it says keep out, do not enter. If it says danger, stay away. If you're not sure about something, don't be afraid to ask your supervisor.
How else am I supposed to know where these areas are and what pesticides have been used?
This information must be available at a central location that workers have free access to during work hours or whenever needed. Your supervisor or a trainer should have shown you where to find this information. If they haven't, just ask. That's right, ask. There's no such thing as a stupid question. Your supervisor will not only expect you to ask questions, he'll respect you for it.
Be smart. Be safe. Don't take any chances with restricted areas or pesticides. Pay attention to where you are and what you're working with. Keeping safe is up to you. Even when you're trying to do your best to do everything right, accidents can still happen. It's not a perfect world, and no one is perfect. So, it's very important to know what to do if you get exposed to pesticides or if you see someone else who has.
How would I know if I've been exposed to pesticides?
There are several ways to determine if you've been exposed to pesticides. You may not feel sick or feel any different at all, but you're sure that you've been accidentally exposed. In that case, tell a supervisor immediately. Don't wait. Or maybe it's the exact opposite. Maybe your symptoms don't appear immediately and you don't remember being exposed. But now, several hours later, you are not feeling well. You might feel nauseous or dizzy, have a runny nose, or experience breathing difficulty. You may begin to feel sick or your eyes, skin, or throat hurt. If you have any combination of the symptoms just listed, tell your supervisor. He'll help you get medical assistance if you need it.
What if I get sick and I think it is pesticide exposure?
If you get sick at work, medical help is listed on or near a pesticide safety poster in a central location at your workplace. Make sure you know where to find this information as well as the nearest phone. If you or another person has been poisoned by a pesticide, get medical assistance right away. If you're not sure what the emergency phone number is, where the telephones are, or the fastest way to find a supervisor, find out now. Don't wait for an emergency to happen and lose precious time when seconds count. First, call a Poison Center 911 or local emergency number, or a doctor. Have a copy of the pesticide label, and if you don't have the label, try to get the EPA registration number or the exact name of the pesticide. First aid instructions are also on the label. If you can't reach help, or it will be a while before help can come, follow the first aid instructions on the label. If a pesticide gets on you, get it off right away. 1. Take off clothing that has pesticide on it. 2. Rinse skin right away with water. 3. Wash with soap and water as soon as possible. Eye damage can happen fast. If a pesticide gets in your eye, hold it open and rinse with a gentle stream of cool water. Rinse for 15 minutes if possible. Try not to contaminate the other eye if it was not exposed, then go to a doctor. The most important thing to do if something like this happens is to get help as quickly as possible. Acting quickly can save a life, but you have to do the right thing. For example, if someone swallowed a pesticide, you need to find out what it was so you can check the label to determine if it's okay to make them throw up. With some pesticides, making the person throw up will cause more harm than good.
What if I see someone else who's been poisoned?
That can happen. For instance, if a person is very careless, they can get sick. If you see someone like that and he's still conscious, try to find out what happened. If you find someone unconscious in a recently treated area, don't go in to help unless you have the proper protective equipment to enter. If not, you may be putting yourself in danger. Find a supervisor immediately or send a coworker for one. Remember, the only time you want to move him is if you can see there is serious danger in the area and you're properly protected. Only people trained to handle emergencies and who are properly protected to prevent exposure should go into a contaminated area to help an employee that has collapsed. When rescuing the person, grab his clothes and drag him out. Go to the doctor as soon as you can and take the label from the pesticide container. If you can't bring the label, try to get the EPA registration number or the exact name of the pesticide. Your boss will provide information about the pesticide. Your boss must give you or your doctor the name and medical information about the pesticide that might have made you sick. The most important thing you can do now is to know as much as possible about the pesticides that are used in the areas where you work. Don't be afraid to ask questions. For some of these pesticides, the concern is small exposures over a long time period, such as 10 to 20 years, which may cause long-term medical problems. This is called chronic toxicity. Again, this kind of information can be found on the material safety data sheet for the pesticide that's being used. If you don't know where to find this information, ask your supervisor. Also remember, if you've been working outside where it's hot and you're wearing protective clothing, you may not feel well because of heat stress. Heat stress symptoms can be confused for pesticide exposure. With heat stress, symptoms might include dry mouth and eyes, enlarged pupils, and fast heartbeat. You might notice some unusual swelling on your skin, or you may have felt weak with nausea, having a runny nose, or headache and blurred vision. The WPS is a standard that legally protects you by law, but many things you need are already available to you from your employer. You must have special training and personal protective equipment for some jobs. Without this training and protection, you must not be allowed to mix, load, apply, or handle pesticides, and work in an area where entry is restricted. Most of you will never need to wear any personal protective equipment while you work, but just in case you do, you need to know where it's kept, how to put it on, and how to wear it properly. First, this is a respirator mask, which helps to keep you from breathing in small particles. This mask must fit tightly around the nose, mouth, and chin to protect you. Men with beards or mustaches might have trouble wearing it and getting proper protection. When using a respirator, be sure to use the correct filter cartridges, according to the information on the mask. Using improper cartridges is often as dangerous as no protection at all. These are chemically resistant gloves. The most common way that people are exposed to pesticides is on the backs of their hands and forearms, which is why it's often necessary to wear the gloves. Check the pesticide label every time to be sure that you're using the proper type of gloves. Different gloves have unique properties that determine the level of protection. Make sure that your gloves are specifically designed for the type of pesticides you'll be working with. That's why it's also important to wear long sleeves whenever you're working during the pesticide application process or in recently treated areas. Even if special equipment is being used, such as gloves, you should always wear long sleeves. Save t-shirts for a more appropriate work situation.
Always remember, the most important protection isn't your clothes. It's right here, your intelligence or common sense.
Another important provision of the WPS is the availability of proper single-use cleaning supplies for laborers. If you've been working in an area where pesticides were applied in the last 30 days, your employer will provide soap, water, and paper towels for you to get properly cleaned after work. These supplies allow you to be free from possible pesticide residue, and once you're finished, the paper towels are simply thrown away. These supplies must be available to you within a quarter mile of where the pesticides were applied. Pesticides can dry on crops as a powder. This powder is the residue. A residue can remain on a crop after spraying. One of the simplest but most effective ways you can protect yourself is to wash your hands as soon as you have the opportunity. Even when you're careful, some pesticide residue can be on equipment and still get on your hands. Always wash your hands before you eat. The chemicals can easily get from your hands to your food and from the food to your mouth. The same with cigarettes, chewing tobacco, or chewing gum. You probably won't see pesticide residue and probably won't know that you were exposed. It's important to remember to wash your hands even though it's not always convenient. Sometimes it may be really inconvenient. You should even wash your hands before using the toilet at work. Studies show that this part of your body has a very high absorption level, and it's certain that any severe skin irritation in that area will be painful and potentially damaging for a very long time. But it's a lot better to take a few extra minutes to walk to a wash station in another building than to get sick. Wash again before you leave for the day, or better yet, take a full shower first thing when you get home or back to your camp. Pesticides can not only get on your skin, but some of them stick to your hair and your shoes and boots and need to be washed off. You don't want to accidentally pass on any harmful chemicals to your family. Keep children away from areas where pesticides might be. And at home, keep pesticides and other hazardous chemicals away from children. Pesticides may get on your clothes at work. Keep dirty work clothes away from non-work clothes and from the family laundry. Always wash your work clothes, including your gloves, in hot water for the longest time the washer allows in one cycle before using them again. Make sure that whoever handles the dirty laundry is aware of the possibility that there may be pesticide residue on the clothes and that they should wear gloves when handling the laundry.
Now that you have seen and learned this information, at a later day, a government inspector might come to our facility and ask you questions about the things we have talked about today.
While this may sound intimidating, it doesn't have to be. Inspectors make regular visits to make sure you're safe when you're working. Again, this is for your safety and protection, as well as to ensure that your employer is providing this information and safety equipment, but also that you understand and follow the rules. If you've been paying attention and you've asked your supervisor to explain anything you're not sure about, then you should have no trouble at all. Your interview may go something like this.
What's the most important thing on the label that's listed there?
Danger.
What does that mean to you?
That I shouldn't touch it.
What if the container was empty?
Even if it's empty, it should be used only for pesticide purposes.
If you found somebody that was unconscious or they appeared very ill while they were working, what would you do?
I'd look for help immediately, and if a supervisor wasn't nearby, I'd call one.
Very good, thank you. And do you know the symptoms of pesticide poisoning? What would you look for?
Headache, upset stomach, rashes on the skin, nausea or fainting spells, and you can have more than one symptom at a time.
Where can you find information on the products that have been used in the last 2 or 3 days?
In our eating area, there is a poster and a notebook with all the information about pesticides. the areas they were applied to, and the time that I need to be away from it.
Okay, well, thank you very much for your time.
You're welcome.
Once again, we want to thank you for taking the time to watch this video and learn this vital information. We can't emphasize enough how important it can be for your safety. Let's review now some of the important points we discussed here today.
Read signs and labels. Follow all instructions. If it says keep out, don't go in. In case of an emergency, get help. Notify your supervisor immediately if you think you've been poisoned or you see someone else who may have been. Know the fastest way to get in touch with a supervisor and where to find emergency information. Watch for symptoms of a pesticide exposure. Remember, they may not appear right away and may not appear for several hours. If you notice any unusual skin rashes, or you've been feeling dizzy, nauseous, having a runny nose or headache, your vision is blurry, or your pupils are the size of a pinpoint, even sweating more than normal, tell your supervisor and get any medical attention you might need. Also remember, heat stress symptoms can be confused for pesticide exposure. With heat stress, symptoms might include dry mouth and eyes, enlarged pupils, and fast heartbeat. You might notice some unusual swelling on your skin, or you may have felt weak with nausea, having a runny nose or headache and blurred vision. Remember that it's important to wash your hands before you eat, before you smoke, before you chew gum, before you put anything in your mouth. Wash again before you go home, or better yet, take a shower. Always ask a supervisor if there's something you're not certain about. They expect questions. For example, if you want to know where to find information about which pesticides may have been applied in the last 30 days, your supervisor can point you to this information. This information must be available at a central location that workers have free access to during work hours or when needed. Once again, the purpose of the WPS rule is to help keep you properly informed and safe from possible harm. Your boss must not punish you for trying to follow these rules, and no one can make you apply pesticides or go into an area that has been treated with pesticides.
As you can see, these guidelines are not really difficult to understand and should not scare you. Safety is an easy job if you use common sense, pay attention, and follow the simple rules which we have showed you. Your health and safety are important for everyone here at the Orchard. We encourage you to ask questions. I'm glad we have this time to talk. Thank you for your attention.